Hey folks, how's it going? I'm Josh. Today we are back with part two of Every Single Warhammer 40k Explained. Now, I had a lot of questions from the first part with the humans, and I appreciate you guys being in the comments answering those questions. That was super awesome, you guys. You're very detailed, and you make everything easily digestible, so I appreciate that. Hopefully there's not a ton of questions with this one as well. And if you guys are new here, I don't talk a lot through the videos. You will hear some commentary throughout, but I really like to save my questions for the end because the more you talk through the videos, I just feel like the more you miss. And I like to be immersed and keep my ears open and my mouth closed most of the time, because all the questions you're sitting there asking could be answered within the next couple seconds. That's why I like to just yammer through the whole video. So let's just jump into it, man, and hopefully I don't have as many questions as I had with the first one. We'll see. So we're gonna start the timer because I don't trust myself. I need a timer to let me know when 15 minutes are hit, and let's jump into it. The Eldar.
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also
nothing.
known as the Eldari, which
my
are a
headphones.
super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, well, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh, only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard-hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, And what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world. Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the Webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the Webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k. These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But example, let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough. The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy. A fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing. And you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity.
There's some Hellraiser stuff, man.
And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed. Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
All right, we're going to stop there at the Harlequins. All right, because the time was just about to go off. It had like 10 more seconds. So, I do have questions, but I'm not sure if it's as many as the first one. So, and now I already forgot what the place was called. That's like a safer way to travel besides instead of the warp. What was it called again? Let's see. I thought he put the word on the screen. Aw. There it is. The webway. All right. So, if the webway is safer, why can't humans get access to it? It's just because the Eldar just keeps it's complete secret. Did I miss him when he said that? He said there's a safer way to travel, but he didn't say. I don't think he said why no one else uses it besides them. Did they find the secret or something? Maybe I missed it. Sometimes you can listen too close and like overlook what they're saying, because I was really, when he was saying I just kept on thinking when he said the webway that there's another way to travel faster than light. I'm like, how are they the only species that figured that out? Like, what about that the other species, that tech species, that's like that that builds like all the gear and stuff for like the Astartes. Like they build a lot of tech for them. And they said that's why they're allowed to be like blasphemous or whatever. Like they even pray to machines. They believe every machine has a soul or what have you. Like that species, I forgot what they're called. So like they weren't able to figure this out. Is it just like is it something to do like elven magic or something as to why they can use this and why we're like forced to use the warp? And then also when it said that like their brains are essentially weird, like you can't really like understand them. Does that protect them from that the other species, like I think the psychers, the ones that have like what's it called? They have hardcore mental fortitude. I think those are the ones, and they go like they can actually like fight in the warp or something like that. Or are those the sisters? Like we mix them up. Jesus Christ, there's so much. But I think it's the psychers. I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but they're the ones who have like really, really strong, like I guess mental fortitude where they can like handle the warp, I believe. So can Eldars go into the warp and not be impacted by it because of like how their brain is different? I know the souls are being sucked into it, and like their gluttony and depravity like created Slanesh, and so now essentially their souls are indebted to her, so they all go to her when they die or what have you. But say if they ever just had to travel through the warp, like this way was down or what have you, the webway was down, and they had to use the warp for light speed travel for some reason. And will they be able to like stave off like demons? Will they like crumble under the pressure of like fighting them, like you guys told me before, like a normal soldier? If they just look at them, they'll just go crazy and scratch their eyes out and start peeling their own skin and stuff. Do they have the fortitude to like stand up against something like that, since their mind is so different and complex and people can't understand it? That's the question. Also, is there no heaven? Is there no good place to go when you die in the Warhammer universe? And if so, how do you get there? Or is the goal just to live as long as you can, because no matter what, you're fucked, that you're gonna end up like in the void somewhere or something? Because I haven't heard like I know he's talked about the sisters and all these different people who like fight for like for the emperor, and they all have like this hardcore like commitment and belief, and they like the sisters literally drop churches and stuff down. They have that divinity in there. They're like hyper devout and what have you. So when they die, where do they go? Do they have their own form of heaven, or do you eventually always end up in the warp? Or do you only end up in the warp if you find in the warp? I don't know. Like I know you guys probably thinking like, Josh, you should understand some of this stuff by now, but I still just have, this just gives me more questions. Every time I watch this stuff, I just get more questions about this, man. And I know there's probably just a ton of lore that explains it, man, but I have a lot more questions now. I wish I'm sorry. I am sorry that I have so many questions. I think that is it. I think that's all I have. On a side note, if anybody watches Stargate, the Eldars, their ships, like their or at least they're giant ships with the millions of other elves on it, they look like hive ships from Stargate Atlantis. That's what they look like to me. They look organic. Yeah, they have like a real organic feel to them, like the hive ships from like I said, from Stargate Atlantis. All right, man. Hopefully I didn't stutter too much, kind of, because I had all of it as I was watching it. I had these questions in my head and was hoping he would like answer or touch base on some of them somewhere. Some of them were just more random thoughts that popped in from previous stuff that I've watched or you guys sent to me to read in your comments and stuff that just kind of like, you know, create more questions all the time. It just keeps on generating more questions. All right, guys. I guess that's it. Hopefully you guys can answer some of them. Hopefully they made sense, because I know I rambled through it a little bit. All right, so I'll be watching the next part pretty soon. I'm gonna get this one uploaded tonight, and then I'm gonna continue watching and get the other one like edited and hopefully uploaded tomorrow. I might better get to it tonight too. I just have a few other things to take care of around the house first though. So, all right, guys, that is all for this one. Hopefully you guys are happy, safe, and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.